The Army Pathfinder team has one basic mission: to furnish navigational guidance to Army aircraft in tactical operations. Through the skill and daring of Pathfinders, helicopters can be guided to points behind enemy lines in surprise assaults on tactical objectives. Pathfinders also prepare and operate landing zones where fixed-wing aircraft swiftly follow up with supplies and reinforcements, and drop zones for resupply. Thus, swift mobility and tactical surprise will follow the footsteps of the trained and resourceful Pathfinder team. Fixed-wing planes. They may also be delivered by parachute, and under certain tactical situations by ground vehicles and amphibious craft. In this operation, the team will be delivered by helicopter. They also set up and operate landing zones for fixed-wing aircraft in secured areas or enemy territory. In establishing a landing zone for fixed-wing aircraft, one of the first things to be done is to determine the exact location of the runway. It must be long enough for all aircraft which will use the field. It must be level enough to allow aircraft to land and take off without danger. And if possible, it should be oriented so that landings and takeoffs can be made into the wind. As soon as the runway has been designated, the parking party marks it. Panels are staked down at 100-yard intervals to mark the edges. They are arranged in an open pattern to mark the start of the runway, and in a closed pattern to mark the end of the runway. These markings will indicate to the pilot the proper direction for landing. At the same time the runway is being marked, it is also being improved. Obstacles to landing are removed. When they can't be removed, they are marked with red panels. Meanwhile, the taxiways also are being marked. The taxiways lead from the end of the runway to the parking area, then back to the start of the runway. The parking area is located far enough from the runway so that the runway can be kept clear of aircraft. Numbered panels are used to mark the unloading positions for each plane in a flight. While these facilities are being prepared for the arrival of the aircraft, the control center is also being set up. Since this installation will control all of the activities in the area, it is located in the position which provides maximum observation. It should be far enough from the runway so that engine noise will not interfere with radio communication. A Pathfinder team will be able to set up this type of landing zone in a very short time, from 10 to 30 minutes. The landing zone must be ready when the first flight of aircraft arrives. As with a helicopter operation, communications are established between the Pathfinder leader and flight leader. Navigational instructions are given all aircraft in the flight, and the Pathfinder parking party is warned that a flight is approaching. The taximen rush to receive the aircraft, and the control center prepares to guide them in. The serial leader notifies the control center of the code name of his flight and that it is turning base. In reply, the control center states that the field is cleared to land, to make left turn at taximan, and to park at Black 1. Each plane in the flight lands as directed. As soon as it touches down, it is controlled by the parking party. The taximen direct it onto the taxiway leading to the parking area. And the runway is clear for the following plane. At the parking area, each plane is directed to its designated parking point. As soon as a plane is unloaded, the control center is notified. The pilot gives the name of his flight and states that his plane is ready for departure. The control center notifies the pilot that he is cleared to taxi and gives him the direction and force of the wind. The aircraft is guided from the parking area to the taxiway, which leads back to the starting end of the runway. On reaching this point, each aircraft is held on the taxiway until it is cleared for takeoff by the control center. One by one, the planes are cleared for return to the home base and reloading. The pilot signals that he is clear, then taxis onto the runway to take off. Thus, the Pathfinders control a continual succession of flights arriving and departing, operating by day or by night. Clear lanterns in place of panels are used at night to mark the edges of the runway, and colored lanterns are used to mark both the approach end and the departure end. Flashlights are used to give hand and arm signals. To mark the taxiways and the parking area, other colored lanterns are used. Day or night, then, the Pathfinders are able to bring in planes carrying cargo or personnel. At the parking area, they are rapidly unloaded to clear the area for incoming aircraft. Then they move onto the runway and take off. Pathfinders may also be called upon to operate drop zones for the aerial delivery of personnel or supplies in either friendly or enemy territory. In setting up a drop zone, the first thing to be done is to locate and mark the T. For daylight operations, panels are used. The T is oriented so that a pilot can fly up the stem, starting his drop as he reaches the crossbar, and have all of his cargo or personnel fall within the limits of the drop zone beyond the T. Because a pilot cannot see the T while flying directly over it, other panels are put down on the flanks to serve as navigational aids. Other visual and electronic aids can be set up once the T has been established. At the same time, the control center is set up, usually at the junction of the stem and crossbar of the T. Assembly points are selected and marked according to a prearranged plan. When the incoming flight leader reaches the designated communication checkpoint on his course, he calls the control center for instructions. In this case, notifying the center that the flight of 6 others is at the checkpoint. Pathfinder replies, giving the vector, the drop point, and the elevation of the field. This specific guidance ensures a successful drop in daylight, fog, smoke, or darkness. The flight leader takes the magnetic heading, which has been given him, and the other planes in the flight assume the proper formation for the drop. When the lead aircraft comes into view, the team leader gives the pilot verbal instructions to guide him over the drop zone. Thus, the pilot may be told to steer right or left. Other planes in the formation follow the course set by the leader. He reports their approach on course. As the formation approaches the drop zone, the control center warns the pilot to stand by. As the first plane passes over the T, the control center calls for the drop, repeating 3 times the command to execute. The plane drops its cargo and heads back to its base. The second plane comes in on the same course, and as it passes over the T, it is given the same command. The plane drops its cargo and returns to its base. This continues until all the planes in the formation have made their drops. Then the recovery personnel move out and gather up the dropped cargo and transfer it to one of the assembly areas. Thus, the Pathfinders operate a drop zone during daylight. At night, the operation is very much the same. Either infrared or visible lights are used to mark the T as well as the flanks. A rotating beacon is placed as the first light in the stem of the T, and another rotating beacon is used to mark the end of the drop zone. As the planes come in then, they see the same pattern as in daylight. And they follow the same procedure in making their drops. These are the principal ways in which the Army Pathfinders are employed. To operate landing zones for rotary wing aircraft. To operate landing zones for fixed wing aircraft. And to operate drop zones for the parachute delivery of supplies or personnel. Pathfinders may be required to operate either in daylight or at night.